It's not just a hobby. It's even more than a passion. It's looking around and realizing you are amidst God's creation. It's answering the call to pursue in your soul. It's hunting, fishing, and the outdoors. This is the place where we converse about it and hope to inspire, educate, and ignite. This is Chase Outdoors, the podcast. Ready for this?
I am ready.
All right. Hey guys, Justin with Chase Outdoors. Another, see, and you could screw up and you get to start over. It's just beautiful about editing. Hey guys, thank you as always for joining us again. I'm Justin Geike, and this is Chase Outdoors, the podcast. This week's episode is brought to you, sponsored exclusively by my grandmother's applesauce. Limitless supply. That's the most I've gotten free since I've started this podcast. But anyway, special week. We have a special guest. That's what his mom's always said about him. He's a special one.
A special boy.
I'm with the BASS Open Pro Bass Fisherman, Cody Hahner. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, thank you.
You know, the nice thing is that you came over not just to do this podcast, but to put me to work.
Yes.
Cody's getting rip-roaring into the archery season like so many of us are right now, and we're just doing a little tweaks to his sweet Hoyt bow. Now everyone in the family is rocking the Hoyt. That's pretty cool. The one year I leave, and I bought a Bowtech this year, which we've talked about before. But there's a lot of exciting things going on, like we talked about last week when we were discussing hunter health. That's just not stopped. We are continuing with the whole crew, which just seems to be growing. We put this Facebook group out called Hill Hikers, and it's just guys are getting added to it now. We're up to like 8 different guys that are communicating, and like we were talking about last week with hunter health, you know, getting rolling with a group is so beneficial from the standpoint of just getting that enthusiasm or encouragement. Mm-hmm. Like if I need to get out of bed and I'm relying on myself to go and hike the hill, I might not do it. I might sleep in. But if I got Nick pounding me on the phone, hey, it's time to go, let's rock, I get myself out of bed, I go do it. We've been cranking about 4 miles a day with 25 pounds, roughly 1,300 feet of elevation climb. It's been really, really awesome. And there's so much, hunting related right now that guys are talking about, but that doesn't mean that fishing's not still going on. It is August. It is still summer. There's a lot of summer left, a lot of heat left, which I noticed today. I got a little bit of farmer tan going today. Spent most of the day. It's beautiful. My wife is just, she's impressed. She's waiting for you to leave.
7 out of 10.
But spent the day on the tractor getting those last food plots put in, putting some trail cutting in. I've got my bear bait out finally today, way behind the 8-ball there. But we're just about done. And even though things have been kind of rat race, I feel like we're in pretty good position. I've been getting those photos coming in from my cutting length system on a regular basis, and that's been a lot of fun. Again, looking at pictures of does and fawns primarily. But there's a couple of nice bucks in the area, and we've only got, what is the date today? It's
11th.
Like the 11th?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're like a month till bow season. But we're going to take a break from that. I know you're excited about that too. We're going to talk about that. Cody's got some big stuff coming on. But we've got a pro bass fisherman in the house today, so we need to talk about bass fishing. For a little backstory, Cody is here from Wausau, Wisconsin. He's been a friend of mine for eons now.
It's like a long time, before I could drive.
Before you could drive, yeah. And it's just so cool as somebody who's guided for so long and done tournaments and things like that, to watch a young guy, because I've now graduated out of the young guy class finally now, to see somebody rolling in the 16-foot aluminum boat and make it. You've had an awesome career the last couple of years and some challenges. So why don't you before we get rolling in it too much, like, give us a little bit of the backstory. Like, how'd you get rolling in this?
Oh, we could spend hours on myself on this, but really, I started out as, like a lot of people, fishing from the bank, having your parents drop you off at a boat landing for hours on end, and I was always that kid who had the itch to do it, like a lot of us.
Yep.
And that passion, that itch, just kind of drove me to keep fishing. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I saw Joe Bucher on TV. I thought that was a professional fisherman.
Yeah.
I didn't know, and
it's funny. He's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. Yes. It's funny. Actually, I'm wearing a Bassmaster College Series shirt right now, but this is exactly what got me into tournament bass fishing, is hearing about college fishing and these kids making it, going to the Bassmaster Elites and fishing the Bassmaster Classic and things like that. And that really drove me from, you know, one track mind of, well, I want to be on TV and be this fishing star, to, wait, there's a bigger picture out there in tournament bass fishing and bass fishing in general.
And that's really hard to get into when you live in Wisconsin.
Yes.
We spend so much of our time, focused on muskies, and we're focused on walleyes, and we've got ice fishing to deal with like 7 months out of the year. But it's bass isn't historically been on the forefront.
No.
Me even just a few years before you, when I kind of got rolling into this, like I love fishing local bass tournaments, but just even the concept of going and doing what we watched on the Nashville Network, TNN, the Bassmasters, in seeing Ray Scott and those guys, like that just seemed so far away for me in those names, in that goal, that picture. I mean, I've always been a dreamer. Anybody that knows me knows I might not hit all the time, but I swing at the plate a lot.
Yep.
And that never crossed my mind really as a goal. I think part of that was obviously where we live, but even though with the age difference between us, like the college bass fishing wasn't there for us, especially here in Wisconsin, and you were able to do that in the state. So your schooling background, or?
Yeah, I went to, and it's funny you say that because I hear that from people in their 30s all the time who are bass fishermen. They're like, oh my gosh, I wish I had that. Or just fishermen in general. But I went to University of Stevens Point, and that was such an awesome time. We had this huge club because Stevens Point is mainly a natural resource college. So a lot of guys into the outdoors. I think we had at one time 70 members, and we would just get together on Thursday nights, talk fishing, and I think about 30 of us had boats, and a lot of competitive bass anglers, and we would form alumni tournaments and compete against each other, and we'd get better every weekend fishing those tournaments. And then once the college schedule actually came out, we traveled around like the circus and went down south from place to place to place, and got to learn a lot of these big reservoirs down south, and learn that fishing up here is a lot better than what you may have imagined compared to a lot of places in the United States.
That's
much different.
It is. It's crazy to even think about that, where we look at these bodies of water that are so coveted for bass fishing, and then you see the weights, and guys are super jacked to get 5 bass for 15 pounds.
Yeah.
And in win classics with like 15 pounds in 2 days. Wasn't like an 11.5 pound classic.
Yeah.
And to see that in living here in Wisconsin, you're like, I can do that every day.
I get that. I get that from friends who are musky fishermen who are not bass fishermen. They're like, oh, it's just a bass. And I catch my tongue all the time, but we are super spoiled up here.
And I'm learning that, now that I'm obviously paying even more attention, because I got a vested interest in how you're doing, and other guys like Matt Steffen now, and and even Jay, as he gets starting. That's it's amazing at how spoiled we are in Wisconsin as a bass fishery. In Sturgeon Bay is thought of as, or is labeled by us. I think it was Bassmaster that labeled it the greatest bass fishery in the country, which is in the Door Peninsula. And for those out-of-staters, it's the thumb. Right here. No, we're on the other side.
There it is.
Yep, salmon are on this side. So
it's
this here.
Yeah, there you go.
This camera thing.
There you go.
But Sturgeon Bay is incredible. I mean, you see guys, the Rasmussens and the Alexanders that are going out there and catching 5 for 30 pounds.
Right.
With smallmouth, and what other fishery? I don't care if it's Okeechobee or Fork or Chick. Like, where else do you see 30-pound bags on a regular basis? And that's with smallmouth. Right. That's crazy. But it's so easy to think of the North as smallmouth territory, but touch on Wisconsin as a largemouth fishery.
Oh, right. We have so many opportunities, like grass. Like, grass is such a big thing up here, and our largemouth fishing is phenomenal. Places like Big Green, where they're every year there's an 8-pounder brought out of there. But 20 pounds is the norm, and it might be a half bag of smallmouth, but the other half is largemouth.
Yeah.
And, I've learned so much about grass fishing and taking it to places like Gunnersville and places with hydrilla, and it's taught me so much about, grass fishing. I can take my grass fishing experience up here, bring it down there, but the largemouth fishing is phenomenal. I mean, you can go out, throw a dart at the map in northern Wisconsin and go catch 100 fish a day.
Yeah, there's a bunch.
Not that big of an issue.
And that's so crazy because like here in Wisconsin, we only think of largemouth as grass fish.
Right. Right.
Milfoil or frogs and lily pads
bluegills.
Dock fishing where there's weeds and stuff, a stump, as long as there's weeds there. And from watching you, it looks like so much of what you're fishing doesn't involve any vegetation at all.
No.
Into a Wisconsin guy, like it doesn't even compute for me. So what is that adjustment since you've now gone into the...
That was such a big adjustment, especially the first couple times I went down south. Seeing fish that related to, largemouth that chased open water bait fish, largemouth that ate gizzard shad that are 14 inches long, largemouth that eat musky baits.
Yeah.
Like, that, the stuff they do down south that related to, like, the TVA and, the Ozarks, Table Rock, it's so much different. I had to take what I know about the north and just throw it out and restart.
Yeah.
Recompute my brain for largemouth fishing down there.
So you did have quite a bit of college success. At what point did you kind of flip the switch where you were like, you know what, I think I can really do this?
I think it was probably, we started doing really well in our alumni stuff, really, really well. And then that confidence just kind of rolled over to our bigger tournaments. And there was just... we were starting to make decisions on the water that I felt other guys were not making those decisions. And when I felt like I had that much confidence in myself, I could probably take it to the next level. That may have been blind confidence, but it was confidence, and I was going to roll with it and see where it took me.
And your biggest accolade in bass was you won... Was it Central? Was it FLW or
was it? It was Bassmaster.
It was Bassmaster.
Yep, on Lake of the Ozarks. We went... the weekend before, we fished Table Rock, and we took second on to my buddy Ethan Schneider. And the next event, there were, I'm going to botch this, probably 150 boats or something like that on Lake of the Ozarks, and we were the only team to catch a limit and won it by 7 or 8 pounds. And it was one of those, it was a turning point for me, like making that decision in practice to go do something no one else is trying, and for it to work out. And the way we were fishing was a pattern, and sticking to your pattern, and not freaking out at 2 o'clock when you had nothing in the well.
Right.
Like, those are, I don't know, I felt very confident in myself at that point.
And so often, we see this, like, say, football, for example. Right. You get the small town guy who's the hero who breaks the high school, rushing record, and then he goes on to a D1 school, and he probably, is a bit overwhelmed at first. Maybe he's still successful. Maybe he makes it to the pro and realizes that, to get to that highest level, we'll say a KVD level or a Rick Clun, level. Like, I would imagine that there's so many steps in the way where you have that confidence and you get severely humbled.
Oh.
Or even humiliated.
I have been served plenty of it.
Yeah.
Plenty of it. Where, I've learned flat out, it doesn't matter what the conditions are, it doesn't matter what the day is. Well, there could be a hurricane rolling in and it's the worst cold front of cold fronts. There is a way to catch a fish.
Yep.
And they will show you it. Because when you come back with a subpar bag, doesn't mean that it was a tough day. It doesn't matter how tough it was for you. They cracked them every single time. And they will grind you and grind you and grind you until you step up to the plate and start, upping your game. But it is extremely humbling, especially if you get in a drought or a tough streak.
Which we've all had those in some way in our life.
Yes.
But you've dealt with that some. Before we get to the hardships, let's keep sticking with
the
positive.
All right, the positive? All right, I like that.
But, you got out of college and you made a decision to go FLW Costa route.
Yes.
And you made that decision over the Opens.
Yes.
And what led you to make that decision at the time?
At the time, I felt that it would be, in my mind, I saw so many guys go to FLW first and then do Bassmaster. Because it was like, there was a lot of competition in FLW, but more of the popular series, it was Bassmaster.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw guys like Jason Christie, Justin Lucas do it, who are all hammers, and I saw that as probably the best way to get my feet wet if I was to qualify through the Costas and go to FLW, fish against stiff competition, so that when the time came, if I qualified for the elites, I would be ready for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And not just a flash in the pan, out of there, done.
So it sounds like you wanted to put the work in and do things right.
Yes.
And in Costas, you were really close for qualifying for the tour after year 1, right?
Yes. Yep. I think, 30. I can't even remember my AOI.
But it was like
year.
This close.
It was close.
Year.
Yes.
In the next year, you didn't breeze through it, but
no,
you did quite well, right?
Yes, I did. I think I took 6th or 5th in the points that year, and was fortunate enough to qualify. But what really kind of I was, we were fishing fisheries that I do not have a lot of confidence in, and I chose that. I chose the central Costas because I felt that was the stiffest competition and probably the most uncomfortable to me to fish. Mm-hmm. It was TVA, it was Lake of the Ozarks, which has probably the hardest local advantage I've come across, and I felt if I could qualify through that, I was ready. Mm-hmm. And if I didn't, I didn't. Because I didn't want to do the Northerns and just do something that I feel comfortable with.
Yeah. Because if you do that, you're going to get to that point, and then you get blindsided because you're not prepared for it.
Right.
So when you qualified for the FLW Tour, what was the hardest thing to deal with in preparation for that? There's so many guys, and that's the one thing, the crazy thing about fishing, I feel like over the course of a week in the store, I deal with dozens of really, 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 really good sticks.
Yep.
There are so many guys in north central Wisconsin that are really good tournament anglers. Yes. They're really good. Guides. They're really.
Super
even if it's Wednesday nighter, league guys that just know their fisheries really well, but they've cultivated being efficient and doing a good job. There's a ton of great anglers, and then you add on top of that the plethora of people who look like really good anglers on social media. There are two different things.
There are two very different things.
But how many guys out there that could have made it that didn't? And you hear that. I don't care if it's country music or sports or whatever. There's always so many guys who, and girls that have that. Well, I could have. Well, I should have.
Right.
You made the decision to do it rather than talk about it. What was that great challenge when that opportunity presented itself?
Well, I almost didn't do it my first year, just because I was going to put my chips in, and if I didn't cash a check that first tournament, I was done. I was done. There's no fishing the rest of the year. And I was weighing my options, and my dad just finally said, well, you're broke already. You're going to be broke if you don't do well. You might as well do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, all right, here we go, Lake Okeechobee. I've never been there before, but let's do it. Yeah. And it ended up working out, but I'll say
you cashed $10,000 at that.
I did. Yeah. In the last, I caught an 8-pounder and a topwater bait in the last 30 minutes, which cashed my check. In the thickest lily pads with treble hooks.
There's something to be said for doing something that everybody else thinks is stupid. Oh. I remember that time we fished the Cabela's tournament.
Yeah.
And you had a fish blow up on a frog. And I did what I do.
Yep.
And I picked up a spinning rod with 10-pound braid and threw a Senko into something that looked like Okeechobee. You're like, what are you doing?
You're going to break it off.
Then, of course, I caught it.
Yeah.
Of course.
Of course you did. Of course. You knew. But, the struggles of tournament fishing. That first start, I played sports all my life. I really never got nervous before sports. But that night before that tournament, because I only got, I think, 4 hours of practice in because of a lot of mechanical issues, I puked all night long. I was so nervous. Mm-hmm. And then you get out of the ramp and you're lining up to go, and you're sandwiched in between Scott Martin and Brian Thrift, and it gets really, really real, really quick.
You just feel this big.
Yes, and you got 4 hours of practice on a giant of a lake.
Yeah.
And you need to catch them.
Yeah. I mean, it went well though.
Oh,
I mean,
it went so well. It went so well.
Year one, you qualify for the FLW Cup, the Forest Wood, which is, at that time probably the second highest championship in the industry.
Yep.
And and you squeaked in.
Oh, that was great.
That was great. So what was that like, fishing on a stage that big?
Oh, that was incredible. I mean, it was kind of a dream come true. It was, it wasn't. That was like that was goal, 2 or 3 along the list. I wanted Rookie of the Year. I didn't get Rookie of the Year, but I wanted to qualify for the Cup. And when I qualified for the Cup through some amazing circumstances, that was such a huge moment. You're treated like royalty. It almost felt like you made it.
Yeah.
When you were fishing there. You got like a huge stage, you can feel the tenseness in the building. You can feel, everybody's calm until blast off. And blast off gets really, really tense. Everybody is laser focused. It's go time. We're at the Cup. We're fishing for a lot of money. This is our careers on the line. Let's go. It was a level of competition I had not seen before, even out of the guys that I fished with.
Well, it was crazy circumstances, but you got in because you absolutely crushed it the last tournament before you got into it.
Yes.
That was what was that?
St. Clair.
St. Clair. Mm-hmm. So what was it like? Like, just as a spectator, following you, only care, just how's that going to go? I mean, you weren't updating what you were catching for the course of the day. Why was that?
I was in Canada. I was in Canada, and my marshal, I can't remember his name, but he had to be about 75 years old, and he did not know how to work an iPad. He told me that flat out. He's like, buddy, I don't know how to work this thing. If you want to put your weights in, you can do it, but I really have no idea what I'm doing with this. I'm like, fine, I'll just keep fishing.
So, are there guys who love putting their weights in and guys who don't want anything to do with it?
Yes. There's definitely those guys who want to keep everybody updated. I personally could care less. Like, that's just one more thing I have to, be concerned about.
Yeah.
If the guy wants to guess the fish, have at it.
Yeah.
But I don't really. I'm not too concerned with it. Which I'm sure makes friends and my mother just paranoid, but
right, and that's more of a fan courtesy than anything, right?
Right.
I mean, that's all that really is to try to get people to participate throughout the whole day and make it an all day event.
Yep.
So things have changed obviously dramatically in the professional bass tournament series circuit, whatever.
Right.
Just the landscape over the last couple of years, and I would imagine that's been a real grind to try to figure out how to navigate through that. You made the decision to go to the BASS route through the Opens.
I did.
And what led you to make that decision?
Well, I looked at, now for those that don't know, there are now 2 circuits. There's MLF and Bassmaster Elite Series, which are like the 2 highest. And FLW was bought out by MLF and basically made a AAA league. Mm-hmm. Even though they still have amazing anglers in them who could compete at any level. Mm-hmm. I looked at it as I'm either fishing a qualifying circuit here or a qualifying circuit here. Which upper series would I like to qualify for? Mm-hmm. And it's always been the Elite Series. It's got the name. It's got 5 fish limit still, which I am a big fan of. It's got the personalities. As far as Mark Zona, Tommy Sanders, like it's on ESPN. Like that as a kid, like you want to be on ESPN fishing. Yeah. Like that's where I've always wanted to be. Like that's a dream. Yeah. Fishing the Classic. So the choice was simple.
Yeah. And I agree that it was probably a really good decision. Because at the end of the day, like in MLF is really cool, and Bass Pro Tour
yeah.
is really, really cool. There's some neat stuff going on there, but the only thing that matters at the absolute pinnacle of the sport is the Classic.
Oh, like 100%.
Like, I would say the overwhelming, and maybe I don't know, like the millennial, like Guggen crowd. Like I don't look at it through that lens, but I would have to think that there's a very, very small percentage of people that remember who won this or that at any other series, who won this cup, or the average fan.
Right.
But the Classic's a whole nother animal, right? Like
It's
and I would have to correct me if I'm wrong, but how many times along this path for you have you heard people say you made it?
A fair amount, yes. But not in my mind.
Not even close, right?
Not even close.
Like, I feel like it's a sport or a career path where you never make it.
No.
Like, you never see, like, you look at Ike and Ellie, and guys won a Classic.
Angler of the Year.
Doesn't care.
Mm-mm.
All he wants is another, he wants,
right.
That next, the next thing, you watch him in that level of intensity when he catches that 10-pounder.
Oh my gosh.
In the Classic, and how bad were you shaking? I just want to retire.
Yeah.
It's just
that was a great moment.
Oh, it was amazing. But like, do you feel like there is a spot where you would actually stop, take a breath, like Thanos after the snap, and go, I've done it?
It would have to be a split moment. You are on stage. Like, I visualize this moment so much. I've dreamed about this exact moment. Like, I can close my eyes and see it. The guy driving you and your boat in front of the Bassmaster Classic stage, which is packed out stage. And your song is bumping as loud as it can go, and you reach in a live well and grab like 2 6-pounders, throw them on the scale, and win by, 3 ounces.
Yeah.
Like that, I've had that dream pretty much every day since, I can remember.
It's just amazing to me that you call it a dream with your terrible choice to music.
Yeah. Please.
Terrible. Awful.
I want, like, Pure Water Migos playing in the back. Oh my gosh.
Like everything, and one thing I always kind of thought, like, as a young guy who's like, oh my gosh, I want to go talk to that pro. Like, oh my gosh, there's, for me, like Pete Mena. Like, I remember the first time I met Pete, I was like speechless, and he was basically like, tapped me on the head. He's like, it's okay, kid. Like, it was, and obviously now I've known Pete for years. I worked for him for a short period of time, but I always felt like if you wanted to have a good conversation with those guys, you had to talk to them not about their career, but their passion. Like, how many times we're like at a Musky show, and the only thing that you hear anyone talking about is deer hunting.
Oh yeah.
Or you go through like
time.
the Instagram pages of all ton of these guys. Swindle, I think he's got more bone hanging on his wall than
tons.
But so for you, what is that non-bass tournament thing that drives you? I think I know the answer to that question, but
that's out west hunting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know the answer to that question then.
I
thought you were gonna go musky fishing.
Okay, I see where you're going with that.
I was.
All right,
but no, you said it. Let's.
You know what? I haven't done it. I haven't done it a lot, but the small tastes that I get from hunting out west, I would trade 10 years. Not 10 years. I would trade 5 years of whitetail hunting for 1 week of out west hunting of any type.
Yeah.
It is so much different. It's so unique.
Well, part of it's living in the deer desert that we do.
Yes.
It's amazing. Like, anytime you go to any state, in the Midwest, there's places that are really, really good within that state, places that aren't so good. In here, like locally, we have so much pressure, huge amounts of participation, which is awesome, which is great. If we can grow some really trophy deer, huge. We can grow 200 inchers here, but it's so much more difficult.
It's very difficult. Like
a different kind of difficult.
Yes.
As far as population of trophy animals, you go out west, the sun comes up, and you're like,
oh, look at all of them.
Look at all of the deer. Like,
you see 100 deer in a day, and you're like, whatever.
Right. It's kind of like the difference between musky fishing and bass fishing.
Oh yeah. Oh, big time.
What are you searching for? And well, the population of big bucks out west, or the visibility of them, as much as anything, because the population density of big bucks is probably higher here.
I would imagine
they have so many places to hide. If we could pull all the trees out,
you'd be able to see them pretty
it'd be
well.
exciting. But you know, there's so much cover, so much structure, so many places for him to hide here and get old and die of old age. You know, it's fairly difficult to hide. The challenge probably isn't so much, you know, like we have here of patterning a big buck, as much as it is the physical demands of getting to them.
Right. And I think also having the aspect of the pressure, you know, you understanding the pressure or what people are doing to the woods in correlation to the deer is as big of a deal as anything.
Well, and here we're stuck to 40 acres or 80
Right.
acres or 120 acres or whatever, whereas out there,
wherever the sun touches, you
just
can go.
all that you see is yours. But I mean, you've done it a few times now. Like, was it last year that you?
Last year,
yeah.
yep.
I mean, you shot a tank.
That was an awesome. I mean, that was like so TV show-esque. Like I could. It sounded like a TV show. Last morning, you know, last day, last hunt. We're going out as far as we can, and we're gonna shoot a big deer. I mean, it worked out perfectly. But you know, it was so rewarding because I was with my little brother, and we worked so hard that week. We put it, like, we both agreed we're gonna work as hard as we possibly can, cover more miles than anybody, and try to find a tank. And the day before, we found that area, and it was, I think, a 10-mile hike in and a 10-mile, and then plus just to the spot, 10 miles.
As
and
the crow flies.
As the crow flies. And then, you know, probably another 4 or 5 miles of hiking, and then back. And yeah, we definitely earned that one. We're putting on 18 to, you know, 25 miles a day. Me and my little brother.
You know, and for the YouTube episode, I'll put it picture in picture on here. But for the people listening on the podcast, how big was it?
I don't know. It was a 4x4, but it was, I think it was like 20. I don't know, high 28s, 29 wide,
mass
and
fantastic.
super tall 4x4.
And that was walk-in, DIY,
Public land. Like, we found, I mean, I think we just found, you know, a canyon that was so far back that, you know, whatever pressure was pushing them to this oasis of a canyon. It was gorgeous. Like, as soon as we got there, we knew that was going to be an amazing spot. And it sure was. Like, my brother took one side of the canyon, and I took one side that first day, and he's on the radio. He's like, "Oh my gosh, there are 200 does in front of me right now." And I'm like, "I just saw a shooter." He's like, "What? You saw a shooter? Why'd you shoot?" I'm like, I don't know. And it was a dream come true, because we worked so hard to do that, and then for it to come together, like, that's, only hunters can know that feeling, like, how amazing that is to complete the mission.
You know, and the cool thing is you're just looking for that one.
Yep.
You know, and that's really what muskie fishing is too. Like,
yes.
You know, there's guys that go out there and look for numbers, just like there's guys that go out and hunt for numbers for deer. They don't care about top end, but like, that's one thing I've really learned about you is you know, first of all, you know, and I said it last week or maybe the week before, like, the number one thing that you can put in your hunting or fishing arsenal is a positive mental attitude.
Right.
Like, period. End of discussion. If you don't have that drive, that desire, that positive attitude to go to the next hill, to make that last cast, you know, whatever, you know, you're always going to be less successful than the guy who goes after it with that mindset. But also so that, like, you know, like that, you know, Mike Iaconelli never give up attitude too. You know, I've been on bites with you where we've just sat in confidence for bass waiting for the mega school, which I would have to assume is heavily influenced by Musky, where you know, you're not looking for a school, you're looking for a single fish that is going to weigh 10 pounds more than that mega school of largemouth. But I mean, you've been monstrously successful. You know, I would say arguably above and beyond the overwhelming majority of even full-time pros for the number of truly giant muskies you've caught with the amount of time that you dedicate to it.
I mean, we've definitely, and a lot of that goes down to, I mean, there's an equation to it, but you gotta be on the right lake. And
What's the equation?
The equation is you gotta have the right bait, which is an open water bait fish. You gotta have clear water, which comes with open water bait fish, Cisco, and you have to be fishing low density water, like extremely low density. I can count on two hands in the past 3 years how many follows I've had. It's more or less positive. It's very much positive mental attitude. You're literally fishing for one bite. You go into the weekend realizing that you're only going to have one opportunity. But that opportunity, is going to be her. You're fishing for the queen of the lake.
Yeah.
Like, you have to have that attitude. You got to be there at the exact minute of the exact, right window. You got to know when that window is coming. You have to be super, sneaky, almost like you're hunting for them. Like, a lot of times we'll drift 300 yards before we even get to a spot.
Yeah.
And a lot of times our fish come while we're drifting to the spot. It's we've definitely learned an extreme amount about these big fish and how much they actually move. Like, say you see two guys fish that spot, that fish will a lot of times will just back off. And you can go right outside those guys and catch that fish, because most of the time these giant muskies do not live on spots. They live out in open water. That's where they want to be. If
they're constantly adjusting.
Adjusting to pressure,
chasing schools, and
the Ciscos are always moving, so spots will change. This weed hump over here might hold a fish. Because that Cisco pod moved 500 yards that way, or the wind switched from the east to the west, and this rock bar, because it's getting super windy out, now has some chop on it, some debris coming up from the rocks, and perch have moved up on it. There's so many underlying factors that you have to go through to get the equation just right with a big fish. You have to think about it because you're not getting much feedback, that it's almost a guess, but you still have to have it just right.
Yep.
For it to happen to you.
How much do you take moon phase into account?
100%. Yeah. I can count on, I think I've only caught one big fish that was, more than 15 minutes out of a window.
Mm-hmm. And by big fish, you're talking 4 foot plus.
Yeah, 49, 50.
Yeah. I guess, the common theme that I'm hearing from you is you have to do all those little things that separate yourself from everybody else.
That's a very good way of saying it.
But everything's competition. Even if you're a sport angler, a meat hunter, meat fisherman, whatever you want, everything is a competition.
Right.
It's not just you and the fish, but it's you and the angler, it's you and the other hunters. It's, can I get back further? Can I make the extra cast? Can I make the bigger decision? Mm-hmm. In the one thing, we're running a little over on time of what I normally run on here, but who cares?
Yeah.
It's the internet.
Right. We can do what we want.
We do what we want. No one's paying me nothing. Grandma's applesauce, you don't care.
Yeah, we should dive into that.
We could. High sugar content. And that was actually the one thing I wrapped up. Last week we talked about hunter health quite a bit. And you've always taken your health and fitness seriously.
Yeah.
How much do you think that, plays? I mean, obviously you're talking about getting back 10 miles to start hunting. You're talking about casting, huge lures and staying mentally focused in hook sets and the fatigue of tournament fishing. When you're talking, not just a one day 8 hour tournament, half an hour from home, but 3 and 4 day events. Like, what's your general health regimen look like? Like, how do you go about paying attention to things?
I try to squeeze in workouts wherever I can, and now that COVID is kind of here, I can definitely work out as much as I want to, but I try to always stay, at least go for a run after a practice day, or at least do body weight stuff, just something to keep your stamina up, because if you're just a blob, that's what you're going to be. You're not going to be, mentally sharp, and I found that exercise keeps your mind so much, sharper and in tune than if you're eating potato chips and, just sitting down in the boat and going through the motions. But musky fishing, I know I can outcast people because, you're fit, you're in shape, you can do it, And when the moment strikes that you're not sore and you can get a good hook into a fish.
Yeah.
Or like pushing the extra mile in practice and going from dark to dark rather than dark to 4 hours before dark and getting off because you're tired.
Right.
I think that's as big of a deal as anything. But
are you real diet conscious, or are you just more exercise focused?
I try to eat as healthy as I can on the road, and sometimes I cheat from that. But I am definitely big exercise, focused. Like, I try to eat salad as much as I can. I try to eat as much good protein as I can. Since I'm on the move a lot, I eat a ton of carbs. Mm-hmm. Like, it doesn't affect me very much, but...
Just wait.
Yeah.
I used to be skinny like you.
Yeah. But a lot of core exercises, a lot of weightlifting, a ton of weightlifting, the big three, bench, squat, deadlift, and I feel like if you're a complete on a lot of those lifts, you're going to be a much healthier person. Mm-hmm. And if you have aches and pains, one of the number one cures is movement. Yeah. Like, try a well-formed deadlift sometime if you have some back issues. Or like a well-formed squat once in a while. Not a lot of weight, just try it. Mm-hmm. And you'll be amazed how you can, your body will start feeling better because you're strengthening places that you haven't strengthened.
Oh, my neighbor at the end of the block, he's got to be well into his 70s, probably pushing 80, and I think the guy probably walks 5 to 10 miles a day, and he's awesome. Constantly moving.
Yes.
I heard a guy make the statement one time, you rest, you rust.
Oh, yeah.
And I've done a lot of resting, and done a lot of rusting at different periods based off of my skeletal health and things like that. But I that's one thing I noticed. We've been talking about some of the health changes that that I've made in preparation for hunting. Like, that first week sucks.
Oh, it's terrible.
There's so much just built up junk that you do it for a day and you're like, I can't do this again.
Oh, right. Right.
The next thing you know, you're like a week or 2 weeks into it, and all of a sudden, I wish that you could, I wish that somebody would do that, would actually record what it looks like. Right. Put a GoPro on and watch your heart rate and things like that, and write it down so that a month later you can go back and look at it. Yeah. It's so amazing once you get that, that initial flush, I guess. Yeah. You'll call it going, but.
You just have to do it, and it gets so much easier, and it gets addicting. Mm-hmm. It doesn't become work anymore. It's addicting because it's a challenge for yourself. Everybody's on their own level of fitness, which is awesome, but you're competing against yourself. Yeah. I want to hit this today, or I want to lift this weight today, and it's always a good competition and keeps you grounded and regimented.
Our maintenance guy at the store, he's older than I am. Yeah, he's benching 600 at 154 pounds. He's winning everything. Oh, he's getting he's terrifying to look at. He's terrifying.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yep. Little short guy, just terrifying. Yeah, it's awesome. But he's same thing he said. He's like, well, I just started doing it and it just got easier. Yeah. Well, it wasn't complicated.
No, pick things up and put them down.
Pick them up and put them down. Well, I think we'll wrap up here. I thank you. Obviously, totally plan on having you back again here. Anytime, we appreciate it. One thing I'll probably do when we'll follow up, if anybody's watching this podcast, and you have questions for Cody or anything about specifics related to whether it's pro bass fishing or the career path or musky fishing or even out west hunting, drop that in the comments so the next time we have Cody on the podcast, we can bring up some of those questions and we can ask them. But hey, as always, we thank you for your time. Our goal is always to help enrich your time on the water and in the woods. And thanks again for joining us, and God bless. Thanks, Cody.
Yeah, thanks for having me.